Brazil. In this book from 1978, there's something written about it, and there is written that it is in South America. And that it is a big country, the 5th largest country in the world, and it is half a continent of South America. The book is also saying why. So now jumping a bit in front to history. The Pope split up who was controlling what between Portugal and Spain in 1494. And a big part of America was then set by the Pope to be ruled by Spain, Central America, and I think also the western side of South America, the book isn't saying it. And the other part was then, the Pope said that, ruled by Portugal, Brazil, for example. And Spain split up the territory which Spain was ruling into multiple different captivas or something, and Portugal kept Brazil as one and ruled it even actually from Brazil out. And Portugal also had not so much interest to rule Brazil. It was more putting its effort into rule its Asia colonies. And that is the reason why Brazil is one big country, because Central America and the other countries won the other territories, the other regions into which it was split by Spain, gained individually independence. Brazil stayed one country and gained independence as one country. Actually, the book is saying how. Let's jump in front of it. The book is saying that in 1808 there were the Napoleonic Wars in Europe raging, and that the Portuguese family had to flee. With help of the British Navy, they fled to Brazil. And then it became the place from where the royal family of Portugal was ruling, 1808, until 1821. I think it was Rio de Janeiro, in the more southern part on the coast. 1821, the king goes back, and his son stays there as the regent. 1 year later, in 1822, his son Pedro I declares himself the emperor, and Brazil is no longer a country ruled by Portugal. It was ruled by Dom Pedro I and his son Dom Pedro II. The book is saying that the country prospered. In 1888 was the abolition of slavery in Brazil, and in 1889 there was a feeling of Republican feeling, is the book saying, Republican feeling growing, and also large estate owners who no longer had slaves were not happy. And in 1889 there was then the abdication of Dom Pedro II, and the country was ruled constitutionally until 1930. Then there came the Great Depression, the coffee market didn't do well, and I think it was Vargas who was then ruling, 1950, 1954. And when Kubitschenko was ruling, the reforms were made, and then Gouliard was ruling, and then the military took over. And the book is saying that the military made the economic miracle, with Brazil increasing in a broader width of economically things increasing possible, the economic miracle, as the book say, but also was repressing dissent. Also, other things were also done at the time to not so have so easy tax collecting, but more vigorously, more stronger, and using the tax money in multiple different things, also for social things. And the country has started to build a merchant fleet to make exports possible, to expand electricity schemes, and to build a highway, for example, from Parana, Belém down to Brasilia, the capital. So multiple different things, but also repressed dissent. There the book ends. The book is from 1978. Okay, now I went a bit off of a presentation. First, the geography. That is Brazil and South America. And it is Uruguay, and some ways, I think, Paraguay and Argentina, a little thing. And then Peru, where the Amazon is protruding in, and it's still possible to navigate there. Then Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. That are the neighboring countries. And what else? Now in the north has the Amazon. Half the country is the Amazon. The country has 8 million square kilometers and 110 million people are living there, and 93% of them are Catholics. That is the country with the most Catholic people living there at all. Now, in the north, almost half a country is the Amazon basin. There's a big Amazon going through with lots of big tributaries, for example, Xena and the Madeira River. And some parts of it are navigatable. The tributaries, which are long, big rivers, they are not so good if they're navigatable with ships. They are rapids, and that's not so good to drive through with a ship. And there's tropical forest. And then there is the Central Plateau. There Brasilia was made while one of them was president. Brasilia was made from scratch. The book is indicating actually from scratch on federal land. Brasilia was founded and built, and that is the capital, Brasilia. And that's one big river system is the Amazon. Another one is the Parana river system, close to Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. And not close, the country is big, 4,000 times 4,000 kilometers, 8 million square kilometers, because it's not getting full square, it is very shorter, but 4,000 times 4,000 kilometers. And then the Central Plateau, there are Caatinga, they're a bit more north growing. There are some regions where it is actually in the inside of the country not raining sometimes the whole year. It's a bit more in other regions. The country is big, has several climate zones. And in the south, there's pampas like in Argentina and Uruguay. It's a grassland, savanna. So different regions of it. Now, what is the country producing? I said something to the export in the merchant fleet. And now it is doing a lot of livestock. The country doesn't have so much energy, the thing at the side. There's only little coal. It was some oil found offshore of Rio de Janeiro. But not much coal, not much coal, not much oil and gas. The country is investing in hydroelectricity. With the many big rivers, it is trying to build dams to get water pressed against it and to make turbines and with electricity. Also with other countries at the Parana river system, that is trying to be done. The longest river, which is wholly in Brazil, is the South Francisco, going from the center from Minas Gerais northwards. 4,000 kilometers or something is it long, wholly in Brazil. The Amazon River is the second longest river behind the Nile, 6,516 kilometers long. But it goes also into Peru and other countries. And what are the exports? Coffee. I said already the coffee crisis in the 1930s, but it's still producing a lot of coffee. Coffee, bananas, soybeans, livestock, some minerals also, quartz, rice, the second largest producer of the rice in the world. So quartz and asbestos, maybe not anymore, and manganese. And there was not so much interest into the center of the city, only when gold and silver was found at Minas Gerais, more in the center, the Central Plateau, then more people went to the inside. There were many people immigrating there. People from Japan and the Middle East and Portugal came mainly there. There were living 1 to 3 million people previously there. And when the Pedro Alvaro something, it was as the first Portuguese person discovered. So the first person from Portugal who discovered it was Pedro Alvarez something in 1500, is the book saying. And now many of these people from Portugal and Japan and from the Middle East over the time started to intermarry, and also the African slaves brought by Portugal from people enslaved in Africa over, they were intermarrying, and that is why the country Brazil has a very unique diversity of ethnicity. Not to the slavery. 3 to 4 million enslaved people were brought from Africa from the 16th century to 1888 to Brazil and forced to work there. The Indian population also, the population previously living there also declined, as the book is saying, dramatically by over 9%, because one reason was diseases that the people were with the diseases which the people from Europe were brought with. Some people died of that, other people were killed, and others were also captured, forced to work, and some of them also killed. And there's certainly more shades to the climate. It is around 25 degrees more in the north. The Amazon basin is also called Inferno there, the green hell, but it's actually not so hot there, just 25 degrees, and not much changing of the temperatures. Further down in the south, it is a bit colder, also in the winter, 15 degrees. So it has different climate zones. In the northern region of the Amazon, that is almost the same temperature all the time at the equator. Further south, 4,000 kilometers south, there's also winter, 15 degrees, which is still quite warm, 15 degrees, 25 in the summer. And I think that was mostly what was said here to Brazil on these two big pages. That is according to the Reader's Digest Library of Modern Knowledge, Book 3, Part 23, Nations and Places, written by Monica Beckinsale, Robert Beckinsale, Harold Blackmore, DJ Dubai, Keith Fuller, Stuart and Nancy McMillan, R.E.H. Miller, Kevin Rafferty, D.H. Sinclair, Arthur Spencer, G.S. Story, James Waltersey and Kenneth Walton on the pages 1136 and 1137, all written in the year 1978. The positions and views expressed are the ones of a source and don't necessarily align with my own or with the ones of entities spoken of. Hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn international studies, today Brazil, and after we've done that, we're gonna do tiptoe yoga. And if you participate in a tiptoe yoga, then it's at your own risk. And the book is from 1978. And we read already the introduction with the geography and everything in South America. And now we're reading here on economy, and all is from 1978. It is only in recent years that Brazil had escaped from being, in world terms, a purely primary economy producing food and raw materials to become also an industrial power. Okay, in the 60s, 70s, Brazil started to become not just a primary economy of making just food and raw materials to becoming an industrial power. What has marked its economic success is that, while developing its industrial power, it has also increased its output of raw materials on a vast scale. So it is putting still out raw materials, but it's also developing industrial power. For instance, it has overtaken Argentina as a producer of livestock. Okay, more, I think, cattle in Brazil as in Argentina. Brazil has become the biggest manufacturer in Latin America of vehicles, merchant ships, crude steel, and cement. So a bunch of more things. But it is also the world's leading producer of coffee, soybeans, and bananas, the third biggest producer of cacao, tobacco, and cattle, and the biggest rice producer outside Asia. So there's a lot produced. It contains about half of the world's high-grade iron ore and is the only source of high-grade quartz crystal. Many other mining products, including asbestos and manganese, bring in foreign exchange. So we're saying here iron ore, half of the world's iron ore is there. In the 70s, maybe some things have changed. And we're saying the only source of high-grade quartz crystal, at least in the 70s. And also here, asbestos and manganese are exported in the 70s. The country's economic potential has been guessed at, but neglected from its earliest colonial days. Okay. While it was a colony, we haven't read history yet, but I think it was... No, let's not speculate. It was a colony until the end of the 19th century, I think. And one could guess what an economic power Brazil could have, but it was never coming to that, but it was colonially ruled. Its first export was the pau-Brasil, a redwood from which the country gets its name. So from pau-Brasil, that is a type of tree, do I say, and also the country is named after it. The wood was used for dyeing in the 16th century. Next came sugarcane, which was introduced from Madeira by Portuguese colonists on the coast of the northeast in the 16th century. So from Madeira, which seems to be in Portugal, in the 16th century people came over and brought with sugarcane, which was and started to be planted in the northeast of Brazil. The industry later went into decline. Although sugarcane is still produced in Sao Paulo, Pernambuco and Minas Gerais. So in Sao Paulo, Minas Gerais was here also. The Minas Gerais, there it is still produced, but not so much anymore. In the late 17th century, gold and silver were discovered in Minas Gerais. Gold and silver were found in the 17th century. This attracted interest to the interior for the first time. So we're saying, and all these towns here also, all here along that coast, they're saying only when they started to go more to the interior. It was only in the second half of the 19th century, so 1870, however, that Brazil found a more lasting economic asset, coffee, although it had been introduced into the country as early as 1727. This became the country's main earner of foreign currency, which it still is even after some decline in the market. So coffee is, in the 1970s, still a very important part of Brazil. We exported it. Coffee also provided Sao Paulo, the center of the growing area, with the investment capital, which has made it one of the most powerful financial centers in the world. So we're saying through the coffee, Sao Paulo is an important financial center. The capital is Brasilia. The most disappointing primary product for Brazil was rubbery, which grows wild in the Amazon basin. The trade prospered from about 1880 until 1912, as the infant motor car industry created a demand, but seeds were smuggled to Malaya, breaking Brazil's monopoly. Okay, they are saying that the rubbery was better than there are these trees standing in the Amazon basin, and they have, as inside of them, as their thing, they have a material out of which rubber is made. And it was used to make car wheels out of it. But then someone smuggled the seeds of them to Malaya. Do they mean Malaysia? To Malaya. And then Brazil no longer had a monopoly. The recent economic policies have concentrated on building the necessary basic structure for industrial and agricultural activity. Okay? In the 70s, the country starts to build up that industrial and agricultural growth is possible. There have been vast electrification schemes, and investment has been encouraged by tax incentives for capital from home and abroad. They try to bring electricity everywhere, and tax incentives were done so that people or industries or companies can come over and have less tax to pay or something. A great merchant fleet has been built to carry exports. Many ships were built. Internally, they don't say fleet, it doesn't have to be ships, maybe also trucks. Well, railway, but I think ships. A great merchant fleet has been built to carry exports. Internally, great highways have been built, including one from Belém, which is somewhere. No, somewhere's Belém, northeast. From Belém at the mouth of the Amazon to Brasilia. That is what I saw there. So a highway was built from Belém to Brasilia, and that is long. With over 3,000 kilometers or something. Deposits of iron ore in Para and manganese in Amapá have been exploited. There's Para. So yeah. And the search for oil has been stepped up. There has also been a high level of investment to mechanize agriculture, particularly the expansion of the beef industry in central Brazil. Okay, a lot of it was invested to mechanize the agriculture and also the cattle industry. In central Brazil and the south, collection of taxes, traditionally lax, has been tightened up. So taxes were tightened up, and the proceeds are used for economic and social development. So more money is taken in for taxes. Inflation, at one time 80% a year, has been reduced drastically. Shortage of energy remains Brazil's main problem. The country has little coal. How many people? 100 million in 1976. There are a lot of people. Has little coal, and its proven oil and gas reserves are insufficient for its needs. So not much coal and not enough oil and gas. Hydroelectricity has filled part of the gap and can be developed further on the vast river schemes. So hydroelectric, so making a dam. I don't really know how it works. It's never explained. It's just saying hydroelectric. It is a dam, and when the water is trapped behind it, and when we're letting all this little bit water through a turbine, and the turbine is when they're going through it, so it's pressing against one thing, and then it's stimulating that basically. When the water comes and presses against it, that moves it a bit forward. And that way the turbine is turning, And when the turbine is turning, it is turning at another place. Some iron which is inside of copper something material. And whenever a magnet is turning inside of copper, I think it were these two materials or whatever, that is creating electricity. And that waves, they are making hydroelectric electricity. So out of hydro, which is something to do with water, the word hydrogen. Water is H2O. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Out of hydrogen, they're making hydrogen, 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Water, they're making electricity, hydroelectricity. A joint team is planned with neighboring countries on the Parana. The Parana was a river, I think. Yes, there's the Parana from Paraguay there or something. There's the Parana, the river. Brazil was badly affected by the oil crisis 1973-1974 and is planning to make better use of its oil shale deposits. What are oil shale? Whatever. They're trying to get more independent of world oil. Offshore oil has been discovered near Rio de Janeiro. And they found off of Rio de Janeiro in the ground oil. Now, that was the international studies part. They already mentioned 3-4 times also with Bangladesh. The oil crisis 1973-1974. And we have to find it sometimes somewhere so saying something about the oil crisis in the 70s. Because it's mentioned quite sometimes, I don't think anywhere something written about it. That means, if you were here for international studies, you can go directly to the next part, where we will continue reading about Brazil, which was now just economy. We have now people in history, so next thing more than a whole page. If you stay here and participate with the yoga, this will be the arms. Have a fit staying together, raven the arms up. Come up over the toe, out and down, heels again down. Come always to the big toes with the weight. In and up, out and down, in and up. And down. One more time up. Out and down. In and up. Out open to the side. In and up. And out open to the other side. In and up. Make an inch of space to the side, open to the side. In and up. Out, sink a bit down. In and up. Out open to the other side. In and up. And out again down. In and up, and out, lean onto the knees. You can go with the heels down. Breathe again in, and out, make a head of the back. In middle, out the belly. In middle, out in middle, the belly. In middle, out comes slowly with the round back up. At the top of backwards, shoulder round, and in the arms up onto the toe. Out and sink down, this can go onto the knees. In and up again. And out and sink down again. In and up. Hands down, heels down. One foot points in front, the other one to the side. In with the arms to the side. Out bend the front leg, with the front leg on the tiptoe. In, reach in front. Out, lean back. In, straighten the front leg. Out, bend it again, into the middle, heels down. To the other side, breathe in. And out, bend the front leg, come with the front leg on the tiptoe. In, reach in front. Out, lean back. In, straighten the front leg. Out, bend it again. Back into the middle, heel down. The legs apart, the toes are pointing to the outside, in the arms up on the tiptoe. And out, sink down. And in. They tend to push something heavy upwards, out and down, in and up, out and down, in and up, hands down, heels down. The feet are standing together, in the arms up onto the top, and out and down. Bend the right leg, stretch the left one, and change, stretch the right one. And open with the feet to the side, keep on hanging down. Breathe again in. And out over to one leg. Breathe again in. And out over to the other leg. Breathe again in. Out back into the middle. And close the feet. Breathe again in. And out. come slowly to the round back up at the top and backwards. Shoulders round. In the arms up. Hands together and lower them down to heart center. That was the Tiptoe Yoga. I thank you very much and until the next time.